I have been an advocate for straight speaking, speak the least, but speak directly, speak in a meaningful manner so that people can understand and figure out what is to be done. How was India when you called yourself Sone ki Chidiya? Principally, across society, there would be levels of dignity that are way higher than what we have today. The definition of poor is they are wealthy enough and they have dignity and they have the courage and they have the ability to have levels of integrity. They do not need to be subservient. The time of independence, your word mattered for much more. People were more honest. There was a higher level of dignity, at least at one level of section of society.
Hi, everyone. Uh, I'm pleased to welcome Trilegal's founding partner, Anand Prasad, for this conversation today on various aspects of law, our experiences, also Anand's book on bringing in significant legal and economic reform. Lawyers often encounter the legal system when it's most consequential. Either the stakes are very high or decisions are irreversible. And in that context, Anand and I have both seen both sides of the table in terms of how to deal with the legal system, how to address risks and mitigations around that, and how does the system respond to that as well. Now, before I begin this conversation, I must congratulate Anand on a very bold book.
Thank you.
I think uh, many of the things over there which would be discussed in the far corners, I think you've taken the bold step to write it down as it is. I think it also serves as a great reference point for somebody who wants to build on it, as your credibility, your experience would also mean that people can rely on this book and take this forward. But before I get into this, Anand, I wanted to understand from you, and maybe best that the audience also gets to hear from you on what. And I'm not going to ask the question on why did you write this book, but really, what in your mind is the book about? Maybe if you can just start with a short articulation, and then we can get into deeper questions.
So I'll say a couple of remarks on the boldness. So I've always been a huge advocate for straight speaking, though putting it nicely, but no sugarcoating. So be able to, because when you speak straight and when you speak clearly, it is the best way to get the message across. And you want to bring change. That's a very good way to do it. There could be many other ways to do it. I have been an advocate for straight speaking, speak the least, but speak directly, speak in a meaningful manner so that people can understand and figure out what is to be done.
Right.
And I've taken the same approach in the book to answer your question in terms of end goal. So here is what I was thinking is that, and we were speaking earlier. So how do you think in terms of how was India when you called yourself Sone ki Chidiya? How were you a golden civilization? So what would have happened over there? One, the economy would be doing very well.
Hmm.
The common man would be doing very well. It's not only the wealthy people. There would be some form of rule of law.
Hmm.
But principally, across society, there would be levels of dignity that are way higher than what we have today, including amongst the lowest of the low. There would be a high level of dignity. Now, there could be some people that could speculate to say that they cannot have dignity, but none of the historical findings have ever found that the dignity was missing. So there was economic well-being, there was dignity, high levels of integrity, and high levels of courage, personal courage, the ability to stand up if you disagreed with something. I mean, in the Indian context, you would put it as ability to stand up for dharma,
Hmm.
but I won't use that term. But for what you believe is correct,
Hmm.
that is what you would do. So the goal of the book is what is it that India needs to change to go in that direction? What is it that will make it good for across sections of society, the wealthy, the poor, where the poor can become, the definition of poor is they are wealthy enough. and they have dignity, and they have the courage, and they have the ability to have levels of integrity. They do not need to be subservient. And therefore, how human beings can trust each other with their word, they don't need detailed contracts, which will then speed up the economy. So, economic growth will be much higher. So, that was essentially what the book is hoping to do. That is where that's the direction in which it wants to take itself.
So this takes us to one very core question on what is the purpose of law and how it is meant to reflect on the society. It also takes me back to a rather boring class in the beginning of law school, which on sociology, where one of the very interesting interplay, which I don't think I recognized at the time when I was being made to read it, was law and its relationship with social change, right? And law is supposed to both react to social change but also is an engine for social change, right? Now what I'm hearing from you, I think you want this series of legal reforms, which probably are not just legal reforms, which go further deeper into it, to actually lead to a certain social change as well and an economic change as well, right? But is this also a reaction to the fact that there are certain behaviors that are in the society which may have been accepted as normal, which we may have normalized, and we don't necessarily object to? Let's not even call it normalized, but we don't object to somebody else building something on a vacant land which they were not supposed to build because that's government land. We may not ourselves do it, right? But that tolerance, that sense of morality, that is what you want to hit at with this.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I go back to this entire conversation that people tend to have in terms of, I mentioned the golden age of Indian civilization, but how there has been a slide down.
Mm.
And many people attribute it to foreign rule, etc. I attribute it to post-independence India.
Mm.
And here is what I would say. At the think in terms of our grandparents and great grandparents, at the time of independence, your word mattered for much more. People were more honest. There was a higher level of dignity, at least at one level of section of society. I mean, there may be another level where it is different, but integrity levels are much higher.
Mm.
You will see it not only amongst the common people, but you will also see it amongst institutions. How institutions are much better. And you will see that there has been a slide in institutions. And when I say institutions, I'm not only talking state institutions, I'm also talking in terms of corporates and businesses, how they operate.
Mm.
So the kind of illegality that you will see today, whether somebody is on a vacant plot of land trying to grab something and build something over there, or it is a company trying to do something that it should not be doing or being compliant, you will see that there has been a slide that is happening over there. I attribute it to more the socialist mindset, uh, less to foreign rule. Foreign rule was able to assimilate Indian thought process within it. But socialism basically ridiculed us as a people, ourselves. We thought of ourselves as inferior, and therefore there are higher ideals to aspire to, a lot of them coming from overseas areas. And I think that is where some of our current day problems are, is that it is that issue. The question is, and going to law, is that you think what is the basis principle on basis of how does law come about? It is people's morality that then solidifies into law. When morality becomes enforceable, it becomes law. Lot of our laws are such that the people have no connect with it, because it's actually borrowed. It is the elite has sort of assimilated into what I might describe as the international way of thinking, or the international elite. And therefore, the common person has become disconnected from that belief, and the common person's understanding of law, and therefore what they need to do, is very different from what the elite and what the new laws that are framed along with that sort of mind process has given them. So the book is trying to sort of fix that. It is pointing to that as the issue, and therefore sociologically, once the law begins to react more to the people and what they want and their needs and their realities, it will, in that sense, hopefully bring about in my mind, without doubt, social transformation of the kind that I was describing.
Yeah. See, the reason why I would like to test this, and like really understand from you. We, if you look at the reason why I would want to test this a bit deeper is that we are at the cusp as an economy, as a nation, at a very important part. In the next few years, more than 50% of the world's graduates, students will be coming from India. Every elite educational institution is already trying to deal with that, change themselves for that, right? Uh, we are also at a cusp where we've seen sustained growth, right? We are also at the cusp where, in terms of the newer regulations, many regulations which were born in the course of your career, some even in the course of my career, for example, competition law or a data privacy law, uh, right? These regulations have been implemented in a fairly robust manner, right? That this is, and there are things that you can see within those regulations. Sometimes the penalties are higher and all of those issues do come up, but we are moving in the right direction, right? Now because of this opportunity, there invariably every nation which has grown very fast has had to bend certain things for people to grow and unleash themselves, right? Now you also talk about unshackling, right? So how does that fit into this?
So you are absolutely right in the sense that as a nation we are doing quite well. Actually, it's whether economically, in terms of, like, there'll be debates whether we have enough freedom or not. But the fact that you're having a debate means that the freedom exists.
True.
Otherwise, you would not even be having that
Yeah.
debate. So you are at various levels doing so much better than you ever were in the past. The question is not rest on your laurels for now, and there are two questions that arise out of it. One, are any of us under the impression that we could not have done significantly better, multiples of where we are today? And that is a question that you should ask yourselves, is that could you have been much higher, 3-4 times higher than where you are today? On all norms, in terms of economic, in terms of social, in terms of dignity, in terms of integrity, all of those. Courage, people's courage. The other is, and what you're describing, and what you're describing in terms of how the system is working for lots of people, it is working very well for a section of society, but that section of society is also so large that it is larger than many countries in the world. So it feels like that for people like us. The question is, how is it working for the middle classes, the lower middle classes? How is it working for the impoverished? And their lives might be different. I mean, it might be better than what was in the past, because they're today no longer struggling for food. There is some degree of food security, there is some degree of financial security, because state is providing all that to various transfers.
Yeah.
The question is that what they're happy with? Is that what they aspired for? Are they entitled to live their lives of what they aspire? And when I say what they aspire, I'm not saying that a driver should think in terms of becoming a CEO, because that way everybody wants to become everything. I mean, I might want to become God even. The question is, can you as a driver live a life of material comfort, high levels of dignity, without having to be subservient, and with courage? Can you do that? Can you? And that is where I think we should aspire to go to. I think the way we think of growth and of development just now, or Vikas just now, is more purely in economic terms. We think of the rest as trickle down effect, and I think that simply like that trickle down effect is unlikely to work, because also what happens is that there could be pools of capture of capital. So in statistical terms, you look wealthy, but it is disproportionate. Think in terms of the US today. They are extremely wealthy people, and they're people that are poor. But there, the definition of poor is different. It is different from our poor.
Mm.
There, their poor is equivalent to our lower middle class. So, my sense is that in the least try and get to the level of the US and then you try and surpass them. That is a base level that where you should get to, where the common person is not living the kind of abject poverty. The common person is not living with the absolute constraints that they are subject to today. In the US, if you want to set up a small business, a micro business, and you want to sort of multiply it into 10 in 2 years' time, you can do it if you're entrepreneurial. Here, you can't. So if you set up a pakoda shop or if you set up a chai shop, then after 20 years also you are running only one establishment. So that is what needs to change, is that people are entrepreneurs. And I think Indians are sufficiently entrepreneurial to in 2-3 years time want to have from one chai pakoda shop to have 20 pakoda shops.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what our framework should enable. That is where the economic well-being will come. That is where the dignity will come. That is where the social hierarchies will start reducing from where they are today. See, social hierarchies exist all across the world, but how does its impact reduce on the psyche of the people? So that's essentially, I think, what you should do, and not to mention what you might want to do with your environment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think I see the point completely. I also feel that, I think what you are saying is that middle class may not have aspired of the level of progress, may have aspired for more. Frankly, what I see is that uh, it should have aspired for more. Actually, people do get happier quicker, right? Because people feel that there is not enough amount of equality or fairness in the system, right? How do we address that?
So what happens is that where you see the middle class becomes contented, it is my sense is it is out of a sense of helplessness that I can do nothing about it, and therefore I adjust to the reality. So I accept a sort of lower level life and find comfort in that, find happiness in that. Uh, the system must enable those that want to push past to be able to push past. It must give dignity to those who have no desire to push past, and it should allow for people not to feel pressurized not to push past. If I want to live the life of a plumber, I should be able to live the life of a plumber very happily running around. At least my experience, and I'm sure your experience of most parts of the Western world, our plumbers are looking as comfortable and happy as the CEO of companies. And that is where we should aspire to get to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think at least plumbers are saying no to come and work on weekends.
Correct.
Or
correct.
otherwise asking for a lot of
Correct.
money.
Correct.
So totally with you on that. Uh, I think we're just going back to your book as a senior lawyer. What kind of a reflection do you want people to carry from this book? And I would want to ask the same question for somebody who's a young lawyer or a lawyer in the making, because I would think in your mind you are very clear on who should be taking what kind of reflection, right? I think it will be good to hear that.
So, one, the purpose of the book is to also try and communicate that you don't need huge structural change for this objective to be achieved. There are small tweaks that you need to do that are very easy to do, that are non-controversial, that can be done, that will solve 80% of your problem. They are slightly more trickier ones, but once the 80% success is there, because with the very, very easy things, then you can try the more challenging ones. You don't need to restructure the country entirely. You do not need to rewrite the constitution. You do not need to rewrite all our laws. And that can be a gradual process, but with very little, you can achieve some of this. That is the purpose of the book. That is more for policy people and for people in state and in government to sort of start thinking like that. It's also for the common person to start thinking like that. Start imagining, because today people know that the law is not working for them, but they don't have solutions. They don't know where the problem is. They don't know why the problem exists, the historical context. They don't know where should we look for solutions. The book is trying to do that. And hopefully what I have endeavored is in common people's way. For younger lawyers, And there are some elements in my book which I talk in terms of the legal system itself. The core is that what is not working from a lawyer client perspective. What can you do to make it work? What is not working from a judge litigant perspective? Where is the diminishing? Why is the confidence level diminishing in those sorts of institutions? And what is it that the system can do to fix it? Today, we have started functioning for lawyers as if you are a separate, in some ways you are a separate industry, but a separate industry on a standalone basis, as if your job is not to serve the citizen, is not to serve the people. Its principal job is to serve the people, but also to sort of benefit from providing that service. It is not about your benefit making the people helpless. It is how do you empower the people while you make a profit as an enterprise. And so that is the mindset that I was hoping that at least younger lawyers will gather from this book.
Great. I think there's one I like the articulation, and we were discussing this earlier as well on artificial intelligence. I think in the legal fraternity, there is a lot of thinking that this is going to take away all types of jobs, right? And is going to impact. But I think most of us, I think anybody who spent at least 2 decades in the profession will agree that AI can't replace the judgment call. And if you're just relying on AI for that, then you are also potentially betting. But yes, it does help in many of those situations. What I wanted to ask you was that what are the guardrails of use of AI? Because I think a lot of solutions, or a big part of the solution is using AI in the right places, in the right way. You talk about the knowledge grade and all of that. I think that was a fantastic idea. But what are the guardrails that need to be used? And then what is that conscionability of, or the right judgment call that lawyers should not allow diluted, just being left for an AI tool to address, which requires human senior intervention. It may not be senior intervention, but human intervention.
So think of it like this. If you think of the legal services industry as a industry that's principal task is to support the rest. So think in terms of what is AI going to do in the rest of the world simultaneously, because it won't, as if only AI is happening in the legal space and not happening anywhere else. If that were to happen, then there will be serious job loss within the legal sector, but that is not going to happen because principally AI will go to raise the rest of the economy, make governance easier, make all those things easier, make it ease of living, ease of doing business, etc. All that will happen with AI. And the legal services will sort of match with this. So the AI will also work here. What is going to happen is with the AI driven world, the economy will grow much faster. And one of the guardrails to sort of in a broader manner, if I were to speak of it, is for AI to be, AI is ultimately a set or a series of software that people develop. The guardrail really is how does it work for the larger interest of the community and not in terms of maximization of profit. And it is possible to also have high profits and to also maximize society. I mean, that is also the dharmic sort of, I don't know to use that term again and again, but that's also that perspective, the ancient perspective that existed in India. Is how do you create a system that works on that basis? Now, that will mean that the economy will begin to grow significantly, governance will change, people's rights will change. How will lawyers, and this will when lawyers are meant to support that at an economy that is growing at that speed, it's going to be impossible just for human beings to do it, whereas the client is functioning with so much know-how. So you will need to bring in know-how. So it's going to happen simultaneously. The question for lawyers is, what is it that you aspire to do? And I know that there are lawyers at various ends of the spectrum. It is possible in my head, and I think many of us would think like that for lawyers to sit on top of technology and to deliver beyond what technology. So because how does technology come into existence? Some human being is putting together that software. That human being who's a software professional is working with somebody who understands the law to make this happen. And law is always progressing, so you can always sit on top of it. Also, with the rest of the economy and civilization becoming more sophisticated, newer issues will come up, newer ways of looking at things, newer ways of doing things. Issues will come. How do those need to be resolved in the context of fairness? So you then allow for things that are commoditized or templatized to be done cheaper by AI and by technology. You look to sit on top. That is essentially what lawyers are meant to do. We are not meant to be doing repeated. I mean, that is a very boring lawyer's job to just do what has happened for the last 20 years. So you want to also climb up this. Now, anybody that is operating on this level, which is the sort of kind of in that sense BPO level of operation, will suffer over a period of time with AI because those jobs will get eroded. So it is essentially, and that is what lawyers are meant to be. We are supposed to be a thinking profession. We are supposed to be a profession that looks into the future. We are supposed to be a profession that looks for solutions. And AI can't come up with a new solution.
It is creating solutions though, which have been found to be quite incorrect.
So it is imagining. So it's not doing it because what AI will need to do is somebody somewhere in the world has found some solution. It'll pull that and it'll integrate it to something. But if nobody's ever had that solution anywhere in the world, it can't come up with something new. That would be another level of operation. I mean, that is in the realm of science fiction. And we don't have intelligent design. We don't have the ability to do intelligent. We have the ability to data crunch at such great speed that it will resemble intelligent design, but it has no intelligent design. So what a professional can do in terms of when you design a program or when you put feedback, how the system should develop, you can only do what you know. You can't do what you don't know. So you can design for a system to work in a particular manner. So there will always be space as the economy is growing that you leave the stuff that is easy to do, you leave it for other people where there's not much thinking to be done. There will always be space for lawyers to think differently, find solutions, because with the increase of technology, new problems will come into existence. Problems that we don't anticipate today, we can't imagine today. It is impossible to build an AI solution for something that you don't even know the problem exists. That is where lawyers will begin to deliver, is that you will begin to deliver. So you'll sit on top of technology and you'll begin to deliver solutions for the new problems that come into existence.
Absolutely. I do, however, want to add that I think the use of AI, there's this one thing about lawyers trying to control the legal work and, like sitting on top. Instead of that, I think the stuff which is straightforward, easy to do, we use the term cookie cutting work. Why should anybody have to go to a lawyer for that?
Absolutely.
In fact, the access to AI should be such that it goes across to everybody.
Absolutely.
With little bit of training, people can at least address or at least know their basic set of rights that exist.
Absolutely.
Or at least the provisions that they need to be aware of before they do. I think that will lead to smarter, better briefs coming to lawyers.
Absolutely.
Right? And automatically address this issue, apart from the fact that a lawyer actually is not necessarily trained to take the risk on how well an AI algorithm is going to work.
Correct.
So I think that also needs to be thought about.
So think in terms of why should lawyers spend any amount of time doing lease deeds? I mean, there's so many types of lease deeds. If you have a well-trained AI system or a software system, you will be able to do a lease deed. A client will be able to do a lease deed, and a reasonably trained individual will be able to do one lease deed. You don't need to go to some basic levels of should I do this, should I not do this, should I need these licenses, should I not need these licenses, how do I fill up this form? Very, very elementary things. You don't need to actually, it's very mechanical, that sort of work.
It can be.
It can be very mechanical.
Just the setup of the initial draft of a lease deed could be, right? But what lease license, what...
So as they become more sophisticated, then you have the need for lawyers, because what I describe as lease deed is capable of being a term used for highly sophisticated instruments and very, very elementary instruments. But today, there is a degree of helplessness that people don't know even how to do the basic stuff or how to generate some. So you feel the need for a lawyer, and that is what can be eliminated. So a lot can be done by technology, and it's beginning to be done. I mean, there's already technology that is available, but there's not enough confidence in the people to be able to use it so much. But if we become focused like that, if the states are thinking in these terms, that this is how it should operate, I think that ease will begin to happen.
You know, this is also a bit of a deja vu, because these are not thoughts that I have heard from you for the first time. We've had these discussions over the years in the galleries and at the lunch rooms or during the afternoon coffee breaks. Uh, that level of freedom to be able to express, right? I think there are several institutions, and I can confidently say that about Trilegal, preaching to the choir though, that is there. How important is that? And you know, with that, what is the end goal? You touched upon overall dignity and all of that, but like, you know, that freedom to express, because the way I look at this is, these are problems that are well known. Slow moving system, delivery of justice, what justice means when eventually you get justice, whether or not the person who's received it actually feels that something just has been done to them, right? Those kind of issues in any case exist. But to call that out, to start that discussion and discourse, uh, not just because, you know, like you said, morality, but also from the fact that, you know, something is not in tune with what we set out to be when the constitution was written, or when the nation was, you know, really being thought about in terms of having its own set of rules and laws, right? So what are the, what how do institutions contribute and help in this this kind of a situation? What is it that we can do also to further this
So let's
conversation?
go back to the trilegal comments that you made in the beginning. So, from your experience, from my experience, so there were these conversations. I think everybody was allowed to feel, or was required to, or was encouraged. It was entertaining for everybody, regardless of whether you are founder, non-founder. It made no difference. You basically just go for it. You'll express your views. A founder will defend against it, will get beaten down sometimes, will prevail sometimes. It was all free flowing. It was all, sometimes a founder might be unhappy with what is going on, but he couldn't do anything about it. I mean, that was just the culture. That is the culture of courage that I am describing. I also remember in partner meetings, so there's a propensity of partners to keep quiet. And I would actually go around the table of whatever partners were there and ask everybody to express a view. You then had a choice to either express or not express, and many partners would express a view. Whereas if you just had a discussion and you didn't go around the table, most people just keep quiet, will not express a view. It is, how do you allow for something like that to happen? There have been many instances where I've put something to vote and I've allowed for myself to be outvoted, knowing when I go for the vote that I will be outvoted. It is, how do you still live in comfort having been outvoted? And that is what gives the courage to people, is that I can disagree, and my disagreement will actually be acted on by the organization or by the institution. And it will work like that. It is not necessarily a founder that will drive some of the thinking. So there have been a number of times which is sort of, you also to be comfortable getting that done. That in terms helps set a certain kind of culture. It helps build a certain organization, and organizations will then take their own lives and sort of function the way they will. I mean, as they grow, that
Though
dynamic
I
will
can tell
change a
you,
bit.
with 155 partners, it's become
It's
very, it's
harder.
a very large round table. Which
So it's become harder. But
no, but you're right that at the core, the ability to be able to express, to say things, even if you know that others may not agree, because you think that's in the best interest, you know, I think those are very important. Akshay has written a book on trilegal, and I think there also he's touched upon something on those lines. So I think that is also that is kudos to how the setup was, because
so it is acceptance of the institution that people have different backgrounds, they have different experiences in life, and they will therefore have different views. Their view of what is good for the organization will also be different. It will be radically different from your view. And therefore, how much are you willing to take that on board? How are you willing to operate on that basis? Do you have the courage to do it? Or do you insist that my way or the highway. And that is where organizationally, that is the direction in which, to my mind, since you ask the question generally of institutions, that is the way institutions ought to operate in India. That is the way institutions operated in ancient India. That is how you could actually challenge your ruler, unless you agreed with the ruler. So there are many instances. I mean, we don't have, India doesn't, and that's a different discussion, but we don't have history. We have our scriptures. We have the Ramayana, we have the Mahabharata, we have the Purana. Some may call it history, some may not call it history. I won't get into the debate, but what it does very clearly demonstrate at various places is the right for people who are below you to ask you the question, and for you to get pushed back as somebody who's king by that question and not decide to off with his head. So how do you build that culture? That is traditionally who we were. And that is, if our institutions move in that direction, we have, since independence, and since you asked the question, is that we have sought to emulate what existed in the Western world. What was there in the Western world is that it was a world that required a high level of subservience. The king could take your head whenever he wanted, and the king was always, sovereign was above the law. In our system, the king was always below the law, was below dharma. And so therefore that leads to a different sort of mindset. We have, while a constitution may say something and while our laws may say something, inherently we still think that the ruler is above the law. I mean, you'll see it in practical operation. Forget about what the textbook says. Whether it is judges of constitutional courts, or it is people in government, or it is members of parliament in rural India, you'll find all of them function that I am above the law. And that is a mindset that comes from where you're disconnected from your ancient tradition, where you were open to being questioned, you were looking for what will work well, and you were responsive to the people. So though Rama loved his wife very dearly, but there were people that were not very comfortable with his wife, he decided to actually break his heart and send his wife away. How can you do that with impunity where your king is not asking for your head? Is the question. And that is kind of what will help build this nation, which is where institutions should go. That is the direction the nation will get built.
Great. I just want to come back to the end goal that you want to aspire for. But I think just before that, and this was great to hear your thoughts on how institutions should imbibe certain values in order to encourage better stakeholders, more ownership, and all of that also comes with it. Uh, how does this discourse really start? Like, where does it go from here? You mentioned that it needs to start the conversation, and eventually, hopefully, the conversations will be loud enough for everybody to hear, notice, and do something about it. Uh, how do we do that at this point of time when people are also very busy with all the opportunity and all the threats around them?
So,
Right. So, what is there a system also in you that you have in mind to and do that?
oh yeah. So my book is structured like that. Uh, people are busy with opportunity. The question is, one, awareness that the opportunity could be so much bigger.
Yes.
With very little change.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And therefore, it is for the state to think what that little change is and how it can do it, so that that whole dynamic changes for people who are sitting on the cutting edge of opportunity and grabbing the opportunity. So you can make those small changes. They are non-political. So for example, putting in technology, the various kinds of technology. I'm not only talking AI, I'm talking various elements of technology.
Or that 3 levels of appeal kind of a thing where you've been tested.
Correct. So how do you do that? How do you change business laws? Again, business laws, it'll have almost no political resistance. So the first two couple of chapters, which is technology and business laws, apolitical in many ways, easy to implement, don't require massive change, little bit change, massive outcome. Then you come to the slightly more trickier one. But by that time this is delivered, the confidence in the kind of legal reform will change. I'm also saying that don't go with this change just because one person says so, a set of people say so. Experience that can change for you. And therefore, let the change come from your need for that change as people. So, So it'll then go into the slightly more complicated ones where you talk in terms of constitutional reform. How do you align the laws with the original sort of Indian way of thinking of things? How do you sort of think of some what I
Yeah.
describe as out of the box ideas?
Mm.
The idea is, and in terms of end goal, to describe the end goal, how do you have a confident nation? When I say confident nation, I'll say the last man is confident. The last man is capable of fighting for his rights, not in my conception, not necessarily through an institution of a court mechanism.
Mm.
He should be able to do it like in ancient India through the barrel of a gun.
Mm.
Uh, or through a weapon. So you are capable at some point in time to defend yourself
Mm.
individually. Um, and therefore, what kind of confidence does it give you at a personal level? And therefore, what does that confidence result in terms of integrity,
Mm.
in terms of your word? How confident are you about saying something that you intend to honor and expect the other person to honor their word? Uh, and that dynamic will change just not just how the culture behaves, but it'll also change the way the economy behaves. It'll function in terms of people's empowerment. It'll function in terms of bringing a much higher level of dignity. So, it's a modern version of Sone Ki Chidiya.
Great. I think that probably is the right point to close the conversation as well. But thank you very much for your thoughts, which not surprisingly are not just bold, are well thought through. And I think it's going to lead to a lot of people wanting to come out to express what they think is fair, and I think that discourse needs to carry on. So your contribution in that is, I think, immensely respected, and I really love the fact that uh, you focused on that. That's a hard subject to deal with, apart from being risky. But thankfully, you have enough years of legal experience behind it to defend yourself. So, but thank you so much for all the time and insights into your thinking. Very much appreciated.
Thank you, Yogesh. Thank you for the conversation.
Great.
And I hope people enjoy reading the book and the conversation itself.
I hope so too.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.